flow of people has slowed, so why don't we go ahead and get started. Good morning, everybody. We don't have a huge agenda today, so if other people have things that you particularly want to get into the conversation, have at it. But I did want to circle back to a conversation that we were having last week that we sort of cut short to move on to other things. And that was that Robin and Reed were talking about the fact that they have seen a much larger percentage of their inquiries by new businesses be from completely out of state, out of region businesses compared to pre-pandemic, and sort of, I think the rule of thumb that most of us are probably familiar with, that you tend to see at least a fairly substantial percentage of your interest come from expansion, relocation of existing businesses. So I thought that some of the folks who might have ducked out last week because we were focused on the SRPC region might be interested to circle back to that conversation, see if it is something that even more people are experiencing. I also thought that this could be a good opportunity, especially for some of the municipal and Chamber of Commerce folks, to think about and talk about. I'm assuming that a lot of our roles changed during the pandemic, where we typically work on some balance of constituent services for our businesses, long-range strategic planning, working with business relocation and that sort of thing. It feels like a lot of us dropped most of our extra responsibilities for the ramp up in constituent service to businesses, and now we're sort of getting a little bit back to normal. So I was hoping some of you might be able to share your thoughts and experiences about, are you back to normal? Are there some things that you're now doing completely differently just because of different circumstances? And see where that takes us.
James, if I may too, I just want to clarify. I just want to clarify what we're seeing in Somersworth isn't always, although sometimes completely new businesses to the area. So they're coming from a broader radius and they're new to us, but very few are brand new businesses. I can only think of maybe one, but they're new to the area. It's not the typical, or what you and I and others know is a current operating business expanding.
Yeah,
it's businesses from outside the area coming in, for us anyway, and at unbelievable rates.
So I guess I can share from a state level from the calls that I'm getting. I agree, everything I've looked at for new registering businesses. I think the report did come out that we were up 20 to 30% over the last 2 years. So during COVID, our numbers were up for new business startups. I think Warren, Ed probably has that data as well. It just seems like a lot of people did start up businesses, but we're also getting a lot of calls about people who are coming from other states into our region. So since I'm covering Central and Southern, I get calls a lot for Merrimack and Hillsborough counties. So yep, a lot of them, and quite a few, of course, coming out of the Massachusetts market. I'm not sure if it's the cost of land or hybrid. I also am taking calls from states like Colorado and California who have employees who have relocated to this state and they're working remote and they want to know what payroll taxes they have to take out. So it's a good, I mean, it's weird that I get those calls, but it's a good indicator that I'm seeing more and more of them happening. So Yeah,
Warren?
Yeah, so prior to COVID, about 35% of our of the clients we helped were new businesses, 65 were existing businesses. During COVID, probably when I say during COVID, I mean really between March of 2020 and maybe March to to May, June of 2021, 13% of our inquiries were with new businesses. So it really dropped off. People were afraid of the economy. They were there was supplemental governmental income coming in to the consumers, and plus there was expanded unemployment for much of 2020. But now we're returning back to the 35% new business inquiry. And we don't count, when we talk about new businesses, we don't count business transitions. So those who are new in business, I talked last week about one of our focuses is on business transition as baby boomers retire and new generations come into the ability to be able to purchase these businesses. They are new to businesses, but they're not new businesses. As far as in-migration within New England, I think I said this last week as well, we have clients coming from the mid-Atlantic states on north inquiring as to what the business environment is like here, and they strongly considering moving here. Then they realize there are problems with affordable housing and with hiring employees and this and that, the other thing. So, the three major problems that we're seeing: hiring, affordable daycare, and affordable housing, that we're all trying to address. So yes to everything, but as far as new business inquiries go, it's now gone back to pre-COVID.
Other thoughts? Yeah, this had a bunch of questions pinging around in my mind, and one of them was thinking about, like, does it seem like businesses are, if we're getting more inquiries from out of state, from out of region, is that actually that businesses are more likely to be relocating right now, where there may be some, transitions or moves that were put on hold because of the pandemic, and now we have a backlog and they're just all happening at once? Or is there something about New Hampshire and the Seacoast, I guess, in this moment that we may be getting more attention than we had in the past?
I think it's the latter. I think it's COVID. During any crisis, people are more mobile than they are when they're sitting happy with where they are. Again, that happened after 9/11. I don't know if it's going to be sustained, but I think it's people are reevaluating their lifestyles. Many people are going back to one-income households. It's just a reevaluation, I feel, where when people are bringing up kids, if they have a choice between cramped quarters in a big city, and when they do the research, New Hampshire, not only Seacoast, but Manchester is on the map now, national maps, as far as the high cost of housing. I guess that's not good, but their cost of housing has gone up as high as any other small city in the country. So I just feel it's COVID has caused lifestyle changes, and this is one of the outcomes of that.
I would agree with you, Warren, on that. And again, just this one little sample in Somersworth for a crazy year, 23 new businesses last year. These are established businesses. One restaurant, for example, I think is just really classic of what we experienced last year, whether it was a Tractor Supply store, a hospital, a rehabilitation center, or retail. This restaurant is a great example. They have a successful restaurant in Concord and Methuen. They want a higher quality of life for their children. They specifically target the Seacoast, in my world, Somersworth. To a large extent, what I hear is great workforce, great schools, be able to move with some of their lead employees because the quality of life is good and the school systems are great. They just see this Seacoast region, at least for those that I talked to last year, is in the middle of this very large radius in ways that they hadn't thought about it before, that includes from Portland to Boston and around. Again, Tractor Supply, MB Tractor are great examples of that. They're not Somersworth businesses. They're from outside of Somersworth, but well established in New England, northern New England, and seeking this area in part because what I hear is the quality of life, and the schools, their employees will come with them or they'll hire new employees because the schools are considered good. There's access to the University of New Hampshire and so forth. So I don't know if that answers your question, but again, for us in our last year experience, it wasn't new businesses and it wasn't expanded businesses, technically from outside the area, but targeting it for, again, like you say, more the quality of life issues. But also, I think the market, I think it's understood that this is, especially north of Portsmouth, north of the bridge, I always say, is now competitive, and it will attract customers from the north and the east and the west in ways that it perhaps hasn't in the past.
John?
Just a kind of out of the box thought. Have you all talked to the realtors, for example, the Seacoast Realtors Association, to kind of get their feeling, their pulse of what they're hearing when people are calling them looking to relocate, and whether or not, what are their concerns, et cetera? It might be a good idea if we get somebody to kind of share their thoughts with regard to both residential and commercial
I
sales.
had a long talk, ironically, I had a long talk with Cyborg last Thursday and a commercial broker. And I was told by those two people that they are busier than they can remember being on the Seacoast. It just does transcend the bridge and come north of the bridge in ways that it hasn't in the past, perhaps. But both told me that it's crazy. They also actually affirmed the whole quality of life issue, this issue about public schools, the university in the background. But it's funny, I had a long conversation with a commercial broker from Cyborg. I used to go to, you asked the changes of COVID, I used to go to Cyborg every month, and Cyborg hasn't been meeting for 2 years, and obviously I wouldn't have gone even if it had, but that's a dynamic group. I don't know if you're familiar with it, but John, but it is a roundtable that's existed since the 90s for commercial real estate brokers that meets at Pease. There's one in the Manchester area and there's one in the Seacoast. There might be one north too. And that group met monthly since then, and again, dismantled. I'm sure it will reconvene, but I had those two conversations last week and that's what they said.
Was that group too big to switch into a format like this?
We tried Cyborg because we tried Cyborg for Zoom, and the realtor, the way I understand it is the brokers, David Choate was the chair, and the way I understand it, the realtors at first, when COVID first hit so hard, it just kind of what you're saying, John, it kind of dismantled their lives and their daily activities. And then it started on the Seacoast Cyborg having such incredible momentum while everyone was trying to figure out the new models. It just didn't work, and people outside of the commercial brokers didn't want to go. And so the Zoom didn't really work is what I'm trying to say. And they may have done it as a small group, but it was 2 or 3 people, 2 or 3, 4 people. So I don't know what will happen now and in the future, but as I say, I stopped attending almost as soon as COVID hit.
But following up what Warren was saying earlier, if businesses are calling in, are we also linking real estate brokers in on those conversations and prepping the real estate brokers to be more of a partner to us in terms of the positive whys you should consider buying and relocating to New Hampshire, and just making sure that they're part of our partnership.
I'm sorry, I really don't mean to dominate this, so I'm sorry, I'll never live this down, but most of us, and I'll just speak for myself, I have a round table, and most municipalities have some version of this. I have a round table called Bankers, Investors, and Brokers. And we met every single month before COVID hit. And your point, from my perspective, John, is well taken. And the interest in that from economic development directors in this Seacoast region is just that, to be able to interface with commercial brokers but also investors and bankers. And that group met every month. And most of us in this side of this conversation have some version of that, or really good relations with the commercial brokers. It expands our capacity, and they're the ones doing the footwork that we're working with. So I think that does exist, some version for most of us.
Others? Other thoughts? Is there anything that any of you would like to see this group sort of explore further with relation to this issue, with trying to, maybe pick up some of those relationships if they have been a little bit strained or ignored over 2 years? Things we need to do differently.
Robin, I'm sorry, did I cut somebody off?
No, go ahead.
Robin, I think that's great. You do such a good job of meeting with your real estate partners in Somersworth. I was a part of that when we were doing that live, and I just think it was a really good effort for you to communicate, to communicate with everybody about available properties, about that. But I don't know what other economic development directors do. And I think that since housing is such an issue that we've identified, I think it might be worth it to invite somebody representing the real estate community, the investment community, or preferably, I think, somebody who can represent the realtors, invited to this. Now, we don't open it up much to private industry, so I think we have to be careful of that. So that's just a thought. So I don't know. I wasn't in the initial meetings back years ago in this organization, so I don't know whether we want to consider that.
I agree with you, Warren. When I created that BIB group, I called it BIB, and then with Warren's guidance, I called it BIBD to add economic development experts. But that was enormously helpful to me and regularly insightful. And I think the relationships and value, the nurtured relationships are invaluable. I think bringing perhaps someone from Cyber, or maybe someone has other ideas as a guest to this, or even some of those prominent, those really large commercial real estate brokers and investors too. Each of our communities have dominant investors and developers. I think it would be great.
And I'll go one step further. Why would we invite the real estate industry, not invite two of the other industries that would be helpful for us to get out of this, what I'll call a quagmire, or the effect of a great economy, which is a childcare industry and somebody representing the HR industry. And we've identified those three issues as impetus to growth.
So that sounds like if we invited everybody at once, it would probably be a very hefty conversation. So it sounds like probably something to spread over a couple calls. See if we can get a few guests maybe over the course of March and April, or beginning of April. Do any of you have particular people in mind that you think would be good to touch base with, connections to somebody you'd be willing to invite to set those up?
I'm not sure if David Choate still chairs CYBOR, but it makes sense to me, rather than sort of drilling under and just choosing a person, maybe if he is still chair, to invite the chair of CYBOR, whoever that may be. I'd be willing to send him an email and ask him if he's still the chair, and if not, who is. But to me, it makes some sense in my head to invite the chair rather than going into the committee itself and choosing a person, although there's some incredible commercial broker firms and representatives on that roundtable. But I'd be happy to do that and ask him if he's still chairing it, if you'd like.
Yeah, if you could.
Sure.
If you could do that outreach and copy me, and
okay,
then maybe we can start going through dates.
Yeah.
What about childcare? Anybody have a particular connection there?
Yeah, I have a connection with Celissa Hart. She is the head of early learning in New Hampshire, which is a conglomeration of daycares committed to ensuring that all New Hampshire children have the opportunity to reach their full potential by supporting early learning programs. So I can reach. I don't know if you want if you want me to reach out to her.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. And then does anybody have an idea for an HR professional?
So probably similar to the commercial realtors, I would reach out to the Seacoast HR Association and get their president. And I probably have that in my system somewhere, and I can drop it in the chat to their chamber members. But
okay. Cool. So it sounds like I have homework to set up a couple future agendas. Other things on this issue today, or other things that you were hoping to talk about? I saw a few questions in the chat related to the Affordable Housing Fund. And I know that there is other pending legislation that goes into effect this spring for affordable housing incentives. Anything, were there particular questions, or does it seem like Stephanie, you were able to answer at least as much as we currently know?
Yeah, I mean, we heard about it along with everybody else. And Noah in our office has kind of been pivoting towards being the housing guru. I did put an article, which is just something that I came up with, I saw this morning that, hopefully that just kind of gives a little bit more of, not even the governor's office had to kind of a clear answer about, the exact parameters and time frame for this, but it is something that is kind of in our lap here, with Nova Hodgetts being involved in that. So it is definitely something that I can update the group on and reach out to the commissioner as well, just to let him know that people are already asking, which is not a surprise. But yes, if anybody else has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me. And definitely, when I get off here, I'm going to touch base with Noah and see how he can help us as well, steer us in the right direction.
Stephanie, just to understand the ramifications of this program, the $100 million is the state contribution to this, correct? And then partnership with private enterprise would add to that, would add to the impact. Is that the
As I'm learning about it and got most of the backup information from just the article that I put in the chat, is that it's federal grant money.
But it's a partnership with private businesses, so the actual impact of new construction would be greater than $1 million.
Some of it is, from my understanding, which is very limited. Some of it is supposed to be used to offset and work with developers and things like that. Yeah. So in essence, I guess the answer to your question is yes, but it's way too early for any kind of specifics for me to really kind of give more direction on that than what is already kind of been out there and what we're hearing from the governor's office. I thought it was interesting for money for demolition for buildings like 30 million or 10 million or something. I thought that was kind of interesting. Not sure if what you are all seeing as part of economic development issues or are abandoned buildings that need to be taken care of, something that you see in your communities. I just thought it was kind of an interesting thing to put into it. It doesn't really seem like it's specific for housing, but I'm just learning about it. So I'm just put that out there as just kind of trying to learn a little bit more about what other economic development / housing things this could be beneficial for.
Aaron, thank you for adding that to the chat. So I read the article, I think it was in Sunday's paper. I seem to recall that there was affordable housing in there, but I don't see there was affordable housing component, which is the problem that I think we all realize needs to be addressed. But I don't see affordable housing in this. I seem to remember that his primary goal was to address the affordable housing problem, but maybe that's not true.
Again, as I'm learning about it on the fly as much as you are. It just was one day last week when the state of the state was Thursday or so, and when this was announced, and so there's not much more that I could add as far as clarity or programs than what they're already telling us in articles and things that are in the paper at this point. I'm like I said, I will touch base with Noah in our office and reach out to our commissioner to see, what kind of parameters and what type of timeline we can be expecting.
I guess related tidbit, if any of you work in the sort of general brownfield space, I touch base because SRPC, runs an assessment program, and we were reapplying for money to take our program beyond September of this year. They are going to have a fairly substantial amount of additional money from the infrastructure bill. And there were some questions as to whether they would run an extra round of EPA brownfields applications this year. The answer to that is they are not. They're going to take the money they have and either fund more of the applications that they received in December than they otherwise would have been able to, or save it and have a larger pot of money this fall. But if any of you are working with sites in the SRPC region that you want to touch base with me to assess, or if you're outside of our footprint, I know NHDES also applied for a $2 million assessment grant that would fund them over the next several years, let me know and we can get you in touch with the right people. I think 8 of the 9 planning commissions applied for brownfields assessment money in the last round. So hopefully having extra money is gonna make more of us successful. And then another thing that's sort of coming through my inbox and across my desk, related to the housing issue, I think we do have a few surveys out right now for the housing needs assessment. I see that Natalie sent one around to some people yesterday afternoon for a business survey. Again, trying to get some direct testimonials related to how the housing market is impacting businesses that can go into that plan. So thank you to those of you who have already sent that around and shared that with businesses, and we'd really appreciate it if other people could help us make those connections.
James, you're putting these things together. Are you working with other RPCs, or just you guys doing like kind of your survey? Is it just a one-off for your, specific to your region?
So I think, and Natalie, I'm going to ask for some help, but I think this was a larger collaborative sort of thing, right?
Yes, I can jump in really quick. For creating the surveys, we've partnered with all of the other RPCs. So we're working together. The general public survey, that was one survey that was created for, it was statewide. It's going to be exactly the same, and it's mandatory for all RPCs to collect responses for that survey. And then we're going to have a couple of other surveys and just like focus group questions and interview questions going around too for other stakeholders, one of them being the business community. So that's the survey that I sent around yesterday. And then coming, we're going to have municipal stakeholder surveys. We're going to have developers, real estate professionals, social services. I think those are all of them. And thanks, Nancy, for dropping that in the chat.
That's great, Natalie, because obviously the more uniform we can make it across the state, the better the data will be for the whole state. So thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you guys for sharing it. We really appreciate it.
That's all I've got. Anybody have anything else for the group?
I will share. Tomorrow, this is Tuesday. Wednesday is the Central Southern Cedar meeting. That's tomorrow, 3 p.m. on Zoom. And we are beginning our process by where we spend one meeting a month having education or informational share. So we ask individuals to come in. Tomorrow, we're having Katie from CDFA. She's going to come in and talk to the stakeholders about a couple of important programs the group has asked for more information on. It is not going to talk about the housing because we know that you all are going through the housing assessment and we're waiting on more data, but it will mention the childcare. It will mention Community Navigator, and it'll also mention what they're doing on the redesigned or relaunched. I don't know if there's new programs under the tax credits. So it's open to any Cedar stakeholder. So if there's anybody that would be interested and is available, I will send the meeting invitation to you, James, with the agenda. And if you can share it out, that would be fine. We welcome everybody. At the BEA offices, we're hoping that the Cedars will each begin to do this, where you bring in somebody and you invite the other Cedar stakeholders as an open information share, education, and learn more. So Central Southern will do this one, and hopefully maybe Seacoast can take the next one and you can invite all the other Cedar stakeholders to an informational meeting.
Anything else for the group?
Actually, I'll jump in for a second.
Yeah, Jenny.
This past Friday, the Joint Fiscal Committee of the Legislature approved a request from the Arts Council for $1 million in funding for the Save Our Granite Stages Fund. This will now go to GNC, hopefully next Wednesday. The proposal, it will allow the Arts Council to make grants to small venues that seat 300 or less, or production companies that produce in small venues that did not receive federal federal shuttered venue operator grants. So it's a discrete group of venues that didn't receive federal funds. And we are hoping that this will go through GNC without a problem, and it will allow us to support some of these venues around the state that for one reason or another either didn't qualify for the federal funds or didn't apply for whatever reasons. So we're really looking forward to that. And hopefully after GNC meets and approves, we will be able to get our grant guidelines out and open the program hopefully by the end of March. So be watching for that, and I'll keep you posted. It's very exciting.
That is really exciting, Ginny. Has the Executive Council expressed support for this?
That I don't know. I don't expect that there will be any problem with this. This fund was actually created in the budget process. So it was added, it was an HB2, and added a line to our budget for this fiscal year only. So we're hoping to, we've got some language drafted to broaden eligibility and extend the funding authority through fiscal 23. I'm hoping that we'll be able to get that language tacked onto a bill in this legislative session so that we can come back to the gopher and ask for more funds when the state receives that second installment of American Rescue Plan money, because venues are going to be hurting for a long while yet. So hopefully, fingers are crossed that we'll be able to move forward soon.
Great news. Good luck.
Thank you.
Other final thoughts, comments? All right, seeing none, everybody have a great week, and I'll see you next week.